Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Beatrice Hyppolite and this is your world. In today's show, we're going to talk about single parenthood, and we have the privilege to have as our guest Mr. Felipe Flores. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, so I was a commute.
It was good. It was actually not bad. The traffic was smooth.
Okay.
Yeah.
So since we're going to talk about single parenthood, how the children are doing?
They're doing great. You got to meet one today. My children are doing great. My two oldest have jobs now, so they're doing really good. Thank God.
Okay, so what is single parenthood? If we were to give everybody a brief description about what is being a single parent. Being a single parent is basically when you have one parent, taking care or having the care of that child without the active involvement of the other biological parent. Basically, that's what being a single parent with. So I'm your wife, something happened and I ended up with the child, so I become a single parent while you're not actively involved, or it can be vice versa.
Right.
But one thing, so it was like amazing when I did some research to see that the highest ethnic group being a single parent are Black or African American, with 57% of family headed by single parent. That is a large number. And they say, and those parents, so you found that people living, like single family household, most likely in the Mid-Hudson, such as Dutchess, Orange, Putin, Rockland, Sullivan, and Westchester. But we also have a 67% of a single parent nationwide. So it's really a large number. And according to research, you have 44% of Black or American children live with single parent, and you have 40% of Hispanic or Latino children, and you have 32% of white children. It's a serious problem.
Absolutely.
So oftentimes people don't get to talk about it because we just go along with our lives, not even thinking about, I never really thought that, single parenthood was really an issue. But they also have some historical and systemic factors that contribute to that. They say, according to research, the legacy of slavery, the deliberate dismantling of Black families during slavery really had a great impact on family structures. High incarceration rate. Men of color are disproportionately incarcerated, leading a fewer potential partner for Black women. Economic factor also play a major role. Military deployment, so you have a lot of veterans, a lot of people in the army or whatever, like army, navy, what other branches?
You got Army, Navy, the Marines, the Air Force.
When they are being deployed, when those men are being deployed or those women are being deployed, so the kids will be left with, whomever parent is available. You have domestic violence. Domestic violence play a major role into people, being a single parent. Mm-hmm. So let's say, for example, you and I, we are a couple, so either we're married or not married. So hey, things got to get, to a point where we fight every day, which is not good, for the kids to witness.
Absolutely.
So it's like, before we know it, we're gonna drift apart. So those are really great contributors into somebody to becoming a single parent. So now, before I even consider any other aspect of this, so let's just go straight to the questions, because it's like, I understand, so we have a little bit of historical aspect, or the reason why people become single parents, but you lived it.
Oh, absolutely. and even with your statistics, which are really alarming, right? Because that's big numbers of single parents out there. But even in my personal life, just growing up with my friends and my neighbors. And when I tell you, at least 90% of my female friends were single mothers. You know,
Yeah, according to research, 84% of single parents are women.
yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you right now, which we'll get into in a second, a lot of my success, which, you know, as a single dad, came from learning from those single mothers that I had as friends. You know, I give them a lot of credit for what I seen them do, for the way that they guided me. I was a scared man when I first became a single dad.
How did you become a single?
Well, you know, like you said, things happen in relationships. We broke up, right? And we moved on. I was getting to see my children like every other dad, usually every weekend, every other weekend, and things like that. And for one reason or another, it was my youngest, which is my son.
How many do you have?
I have three. I have a 23-year-old. I have a 17-year-old. She's about to be 18. And I have a 15-year-old who's about to be 16, literally in the next few days. So.
Okay, so any of them in college or completed college?
Yes, absolutely. So my oldest, my 23-year-old, did complete college. She graduated with a bachelor's in arts. She loves that field, so she's looking forward to working in it. I have my middle daughter. She is currently in college for education. She wants to be a teacher.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I have my son, who is the baby. He is currently a junior in high school.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you so much. Truly
You must be
appreciate
proud.
it. Say it again?
You must be proud.
Oh, I'm very proud. You know, I'm tough on them, but I'm very proud of them at the same time. They're definitely doing their thing when it comes to their education.
Okay, that's very important. That's what we call tough love. You know, we love our kids. We want a better life for them, but at the same talking, so we know, we know when we have to be lenient and when to be tough.
Yeah.
And it's very important because if we don't get that balance, it won't be good.
At
so
all.
that's very important. If you were to share your experience, as being a single father, how will you describe that?
Well, let's start from when I became a single dad, right? I was a bachelor. I was working a job. I had my own apartment. And this is me being single after my children were born. I had my own place. And about a year and a half of having my own place, I get a call from my son's mother, who, for one reason or another, she needed the assistance of me taking him, right? So I took custody of him. And immediately the first day, I have this 1.5-year-old little boy in my house, and I'm like, party's over, right? It's time to do what I'm here to do, right?
Yeah.
And I went from being a bachelor, single, free life, and to all of a sudden, I have this little boy I have to take care of 7 days a week.
You realize that, hey, you know what? It was your responsibility to bring that little boy into the world. And now it's time to take care of that little
Absolutely.
boy.
And there was never any question, right? There was never any question of whether I was like, oh, I can't because I'm doing this. I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't. And I'm going to tell you what happened one day, right? Literally the day I got him, a lot of my friends, my female friends who were single moms, came by and they wanted to see him. And they were like, oh, wow. So they were in my house going, well, you need to rearrange your apartment this way. He's a little boy. He's going to bump into things. And I'm already looking at them like, oh, you guys giving me pointers. This is great. So I was taking all their advice. And in that moment, I sat there and I said to myself, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I was scared. I'd never been a single dad before. I was scared. And one of my friends literally looked at me and says, hey, we've been doing this forever. And it dawned on me, like, I looked at my friends, I'm like, you know what, you're right. As long as I've known you guys have been single mothers. And when I tell you, they looked at me and told me, you will figure it out and you got this, they gave me that fire to literally start looking at my current situation a little bit different. Not scared, more like, I need a plan. Ironically, I didn't know what I was gonna do. I had to go to work the next day and I'm like, I don't have a sitter. So I'm sitting at the stoop in front of my house with my son and he's playing, when all of a sudden, I don't know, it was God sent, right? My neighbor she moved in, but when she came outside, I looked at her and I'm like, I think I know you. And she goes, yeah, we used to go to high school together. And I was like, wait, you're right. She was about to she was already a single mother, giving birth to another baby, still a single mom, right? And she looked at me and she was like, yo, I know that you're looking for a sitter. If you need the help, I'll babysit while you go to work. And it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders.
That was really God sent.
Who are you telling? When I tell you that, again, who came to the rescue? A single mom. A single mom. And she didn't charge me right away, you know, because she was just like, I know you need the help. Like, you look like you need some help. And I was like, I do. And she would watch my son. I would drop him off 6 a.m. I would then get home around 6 p.m. from work, and I would pick him up. Luckily, she was literally my next door neighbor, which means I did not have to travel to another part of town to pick up my child and then bring him home. I could literally just go home and grab him from next door.
Yeah, and it's very important, you know, to have a great support system, because it's like, as long that people may think that it's light, oh, that's your child, you know, you're taking care of your child, I don't need to be there for you or what have you. Just, you know, taking a child from somebody, you know, for 1 hour, for 1 or 2 hours can make a lot of a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
And before I even continue with the series of questions that I have, I remember myself, I don't have children, but I had the experience of being a single parent for 3 months.
Yeah.
That was the time when my brother, you know, so got separated or divorced, whatever the situation was with his wife or the woman that he was living with. So, and when the day my brother called me and telling me that he was left with the child, and I said, I knew, because your wife already called me and informed me. So the man was really panicking. So like you just mentioned, you never had the experience of being a single parent. And so he never had that experience. So, and bear in mind, he's in Haiti and I'm in here. So, and I'm like, so how could I have been of assistance to this man? Because I could tell the man was going crazy. So, and that's when I realized and understand the importance of a great support system. As much as I wanted to help my brother, I could not do it alone. So there was a daycare right across of my basement apartment at that time. And I said, okay, they open at 6. If I get the girl for him for 3 months, I can place that girl over there, because at that time I used to work 2 jobs and be a full-time student and leave my house every day at 6 and come back at 12 at night. So that was quite a challenge. But I said, let me go and ask my stepmother and his brother how they could be of assistance to that. And without even questioning it, my stepmother was in it. Her brother was in it. My sister was in it. Then that's when, you know, I had the kind of the green light to go and tell my brother, you know what, send the girl. I'm gonna have the girl for 3 months. During that period of time, you will figure out what to do. Because eventually I have to send the girl back for school. To make a long story short, those 3 months, I struggle, even with the assistance of my stepmother, her brother, my sisters. So it was still a challenge. When I took on the responsibility of taking care of that child, I completely forgot that I had a weekend job, you know, that I had to, you know, there was no babysitter available. The daycare does not open, you know, on weekends. Now I had to go and have a conversation with my manager, and she allowed me to come to work with that girl for 2 days. So it was like quite a challenge. And I'm like, okay, so I only dealt with that for 3 months and I was up here. What about those who have dealt with it for, you know, for 20 years, for 18 years, for what have you? So it's a challenge. And I really, you know, I really take my hat off, you know, like for all of the single parents out there, whether you're a father, a mother, or not, a sister, or what have you. So it's like, it's it's something.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, your brother's very lucky he had you, right? They're in the position to be able to assist.
You know.
So, we get lucky sometimes. And I got to say that I definitely did get lucky, considering that my neighbor happened to be an old friend, considering she was willing to watch my son. And that happened for about 2 to 3 years. I was going to work, picking him up. He wasn't in school yet. He didn't start school till he was 4. So for the first 2 years, it was just picking him up, going to work, dropping him off, going to work, picking him up, and coming home. And then I started realizing I can't afford to pay my rent, take care of this little boy, and take care of myself. So I needed to go back to school in order to try to get another job.
Those are the challenges,
Yeah.
that you were facing.
Absolutely, and I felt it. I felt it because I for one reason or another, I didn't get child support for my children. Right, it was all the weight was on me, and again, I didn't question it. I wasn't bothered by it. It's just something I had to figure out. Again, watching my friends who were single mothers was the fuel behind me. And let me tell you, my friends would not let me forget it to say that you got this. Right, so I always appreciated them for that. So what happens?
So you always got that booster when you need
till
it.
this day, I still have
And
that boost.
especially the way, so you were not on the road alone because they were single parents themselves as well.
Absolutely.
So it's like whatever that, hey, if I can do it, you can do it
Absolutely.
too. And
Absolutely.
so we need people like that in our lives. But not people to kind of tear us down or people to say, you know what, hey, you know what, oh, you will never be able to do it. So it's a challenge, it's rough. I like when people challenge me because at the end of the day, life was not easy yesterday, it's
Right.
not easy today, and it will never be easy.
Right.
But if you put the effort and go along with the sacrifices that you have to go along with, hey, trust me, you will see, the light at the end of the, at the end of the day. And so that's what you've been saying. Now you already have one graduated from college, one is in college, and the other one, in another 2 years gonna be in college. It's the result of your hard work.
Yeah, well, it's a long journey that I'm actually enjoying right now, watching what they're doing and just seeing their little personalities, how they've taken form, and seeing how responsible, just to see my daughter get up every morning, go to college, and come home, do her work, and then see her this morning alone, just getting up, getting ready to go to work. And I'm like, you're doing it, and I don't have to be behind you. And it's like, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but at the same time, I mean, I guess seeing my routine.
Watch her becoming, on the verge of becoming a woman.
Yes, and it's a great journey. Like I even today, just watching her get ready for work, it was just one of those things. Like, oh, the years have passed. When, like I said, I became a single dad. I got my son first, and it was just such a shock to me as a single dad. And watching him grow up, that was literally 14 years ago. And I don't know where those 14 years went because it seems like just yesterday.
And what was the biggest challenges?
Oh, man. Our biggest challenges were always some form of childcare, right? Even though I had my neighbor who was babysitting for me, I now had to start college because I wanted to get a better job. So I enrolled in school, evening school, which means now I'm dropping him off at 6 a.m., but I'm not getting home till 10 p.m. So literally, she was a real close friend of mine. I would get home and she would already have him fed in his pajamas. She lived next door, so all I would do is pick him up and go right next door to my house. So it wasn't like I was traveling with him. So that helped a lot. Again, I can't stress how much credit I want to give to my single mothers, my friends who looked out for me and really nurtured what's happening now. But that happened for 2 years where I was going to college, and we did that 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., 6 a.m. to p.m. for 2 years. Graduated with my bachelor's degree, which allowed me to apply for better jobs, which allowed me to get in a better financial situation. And even then, being a single dad, once he started school, my son started school at 4, now comes a whole series of, I have to meet with teachers. I have to take time off of work just to go to the schools, meet with teachers, meet with the counselors, meet with everybody in order to make sure that he's good at the school.
Each comes with different expectations.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And, kindergarten, cakewalk, right? Because it's kindergarten. But as you start going into the number grades, they start learning different, and you have to start paying more focus on certain things, on their own challenges. So you have my son who, he might have been a great reader but was struggling in math, so now I have to take out time for tutoring, I have to take out time for homework, I have to take out time to make dinner, I have to take time to go to the schools, and it gets overwhelming, but somehow, some way I managed, and sometimes I don't know how I did it, and
yes, you did.
It was a great experience. And then right around when my son was about, I want to say he was about 7-8 years old, I got custody of my other daughter, my middle daughter. When she was 10, my daughter's mother called me and was like, listen, I need you to take her. And she was going through some stuff in her life, and Ken, my child, no questions, bring her on over. But now I have a 10-year-old little girl. Now raising a little boy is its own challenge, right? Mm-hmm. But now I have a 10-year-old girl, and I have no idea what I'm doing. So I jump on the phone and I call my team, right?
Because to you, it was like more challenging,
yes.
Because, raising a girl, so now, you have like, you probably didn't know how to comb hair. So now, so it's like,
comb hair, her braids used to be, and, I would try, and at times she would just wear it just because I tried. So she was like, yeah, it'll do for today, Dad, and I would look at her like, I'm sorry, like, I don't know how to braid hair.
But that was pretty sweet of her.
Yeah, no,
some kids will have went ballistic.
No, yeah, no, but you know what? She also knew in the situation we were in, there was times where, I had to remind myself and remind my children, like, you guys have never lived with me, right? But I've also never really lived with you. And I've never been a single dad. You guys have never been kids that live with just a dad, so it was like, it was a first for all of us. So we're all kind of learning in this process of me raising you guys and you guys opening up to me and allowing me to guide you through that, right? But as, they become from adolescents to teenagers and things like that, their personalities change. Luckily I never had a problem with them being ungrateful. I never had a problem with them being trouble kids, like wanting to run the streets and things like that. One thing I did definitely decide when I became a single dad was I'm gonna be present every day.
Every day. Every single day.
I wasn't gonna be one of those dads that goes out and parties on the weekends, and even though, you can, I don't judge nobody for doing what they do, but I wasn't going to be that dad.
I'm glad that you tap on that, because I've seen you, I watch you. There is nothing in this entire world that is more precious, more valuable for you than your children.
Absolutely.
And I always admire that. Even when the idea to come up with this topic, and you were the first person who came to mind. Because I said, I've known so many great fathers, but you're special.
Well, I appreciate it.
And not only I've seen you, doing your job, you go to work and you work, with a very difficult population. We're not going to talk about that.
Right.
But, to work with the population that I know that you work with, and still, like create time to spend quality time with your family. You always have, I have to take my daughter to the park. I have to take my son to this place. We have to do that, So you enjoy being around those kids.
100%, and I made it into almost a part of me. It's a part of what I do. A lot of people have hobbies, right? Like they probably drive cars, they probably ride motorcycles, they probably play baseball, they probably do something, right? My hobby literally became, what am I doing with them, right? And, I had a pretty rough childhood growing up too. I was raised by a single dad. I was raised by my father. Ironically, it's always the joke amongst us, like, wow, your dad raised you and now you're a dad raising yours. And that man's probably the best thing in my life. My dad's my best friend. Well, I was a ruthless little teenager and things like that. But one thing, once I hit my 20s, I realized, man, he's never left me. He never left my side. He was always present. if I didn't have it, my dad didn't have it times 10. You know, so it was one of those things where I definitely had a good role model, but he also, like me, also needed assistance. So my grandmother stepped in and helped out a lot when it came to me, and watched me grow up and took me to school and things like that. So, but my dad really taught me a lot of what it's like to be present. We didn't have much, but he was there.
And sometimes that's the most important thing. You know, like when you there, you present, the quality time that you spend with the people that you love. You know, that's the most important thing, because at the end of the day, I may have $1 million to offer you. Okay, so it's money.
Yeah.
You know, in a matter of a second of a minute, depends on your lifestyle. That money can be blown out, you know.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Very quick.
You're absolutely
right. But the
right.
quality of time, you know, spending with people, spending with your loved ones, you know, so it's priceless.
No.
To go back to something that you mentioned earlier, so you understand that, you know, people can party, but parties, you know, or going out was not your priority, because you had that little ones that were your priorities.
Yeah.
And I respect that. And I remember, you know, a couple years ago, I was at that beauty salon, and that 22 years old girl who apparently had 2 kids and wanted to party every weekend and expect for her mom to be the babysitter, or, you know, so she made it her mom's responsibility, you know, to take care of her own children. So I didn't know them, but because they were having the conversation in my presence at the beauty salon, so I deliberately get involved, you know, and trying to explain to the girl, your mom raised you. You know, she could have said, you know what, I've raised you, you know, now my job is over. But you brought 2 little ones into her life, and she wants to embrace them, accept them, and be there for them. But at the end of the day, you are those kids' mother, not her.
Right.
So I understand from time to time you're gonna need a break. We all do. And God knows how many times I babysit my friends' kids just for them to have a break, because it's important. Sometimes people need a mental health day.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Sometimes, you know, people want to go to a party. I'm gonna get that child for you for the night. Just drop the child, you know, go party. But the next day, don't wait until I call you to pick up your... Make sure by 11 o'clock or 12, you know, you're already at my door to pick up your precious little one. Right. And, you know, but don't take it for granted, or don't abuse it.
Right.
You know? So I understand this, the support's supposed to be there for you. It's a beautiful thing when you have family, friends, and neighbors, everyone or anyone who could step in to assist you in that journey. It's a beautiful thing. But know that at the end of the day, that's your sole priority.
And which is something that you see a lot now, right? Even, I'll not say, even some of my friends, you would see a lot how the grandparents were really the primary caretakers, right? And the moms were there, even though they were still around, but they were still living a different life. They were still living like if they were still single and they didn't have children, like they would make their own plans. They're going out on the weekends and things like that. And, you know, grandmothers never say no. So they're like, hey, yeah, leave them here. You can go.
But as a as a grandmother, even if I were to say no, that will not be a problem.
Right.
Because I'm entitled to say no.
Right.
If I see that, you know, hey, you're just taking advantage.
Yeah.
Because there is a difference when you are in need and when you are taking advantage.
100%.
If I've noticed that, hey, you're only taking advantage, I have plenty of right to know to step up and say, you know what? Be the mother that you need to be. Be the father that you need to be.
Right. No, you're right. And, you know, ironically, right around the time I got custody of my 10-year-old, which is my daughter, my dad was in an accident at work and he needed to move in with me. So when he moved in, it was one of those things where immediately he was like, hey, I'm here now. You can leave the kids with me. I'll make sure they go to school, they get ready and these things while you go to work and all of these things. So, it became an extra help, right? So now I have almost what I want to say practically a living nanny, right? Because my dad, phenomenal with the kids. My dad took my son under his wing, and I pretty much probably didn't have a son for about a month because they were just everywhere together. He was making sure they ate and all these things, but my dad really showed me what it's like to be a unit, because even when he moved in, he immediately was like, I'm back in the house. Now this is our family, so we're taking care of this, and to this day, my dad still lives with me,
And what is his relationship with the kids? How the kids,
They love him. They love him. He's a great guy. He always makes sure that they're good. He always makes sure that they have money, which I always tell him not to give them. His relationship with them is great.
Grandparents love to spoil their kids.
And he's one of them.
And I know one of those. Like my stepmother, forget about it.
It's hard to see Christmases when he would buy them these $1,000 tablets, and I'm like, wait a minute, I ain't get no $1,000 tablet when I was 16. What's going on here? There
was a tablet around when you were 16.
Maybe something around that, right? Probably not. We're not gonna get into my age, but probably not. You're probably right at there. But I see what he does for them, and there was plenty of times that I look at them and I'm like, yo, you see your grandfather? You see how my dad's old school. My dad's a real old school person.
But not even with the way that we were being disciplined. It's two different
definitely
things.
Two different things.
Because I'm gonna use my stepmother as an example. And I know that you're watching now, so it's like, hey, don't take it hard on me when you get to see me. So it's like, I know how hard she used to be on my siblings, and now watching my siblings with kids and how lenient she is with those grandchildren.
Right.
And I'm like, this is not the same lady that I knew with my sister.
Right.
Because my sister, will come home. My sister was a great student, great student, A average. And one time, I don't know what happened. The girl came with a B grade. Oh, that girl got beat up.
Yeah.
And now, so it's like, and so my stepmother was like, and we're grateful because it's like, I often said, if we were not disciplined the way that we did, so only God knows what our life will have unfold to.
Right.
But to see her now, so it's like, it's whatever with the grandchildren. And I'm like, so what it is with you grandparents?
Yeah.
It's because they're not yours.
No, and that's the thing, right? So I'm tough on my kids. I really am. When it comes to schoolwork, especially, that's really where I'm at. I could let not even cleaning your rooms type of thing slide. We'll clean it together at some point, right? But when it comes to school, I don't even negotiate. I'm not here to negotiate with you regarding your education, right? So I'm very tough on them with that aspect, only because for one reason or another, I dropped out of school.
You sound like Asian now.
Do I?
Asian people don't play education. No, it's like, hey, they don't play with that.
Because I know the struggle that I went through without it, right? I didn't get my GED or anything like that till I was in my mid-20s. And I had to settle for jobs that were paying me minimum wage or working off the books because I couldn't get a job without my high school diploma. And I always said to them, I don't want you trying to figure it out at 25 or 30 years old. I want you to figure it now when you're 15, 16, 17. By the time you reach the age where I figured it out, you should already surpass where I'm at.
You should be settled.
And that's where I've never diverted from that. I've never moved from that. Which is why you can go to any one of my kids' schools. You can go to any one of their colleges and they'll be like, oh, Mr. Flores? Oh yeah, he lives here. Because I was always present. I make sure the teachers, the Board of Education, the colleges, they know who I am.
Even at work, I've seen you, they call for your kids.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I'm out.
Yeah.
I seen you. I watch you move, you know, in a very, very engaging,
Yeah.
father.
No.
So, because you always there, so you don't play.
And
When
since
it comes
I'm
to your
already
kids,
like
you
that, I
don't
don't
play.
see it, right? I don't see it for myself. But when people like you tell it to me, it's like, oh wow, people are watching and they take notice. And you were always really good at really observing at what I was doing. And we used to sit down and talk about my children
Oh, you
all the
and
time.
always spoke very highly about those kids. And sometimes, if I were somebody who probably were into having kids, this man will probably got me into the point to have probably a dozen by now.
Right. Children are great. Listen, I got them since they were young, so there was a lot of things that I got to do with them that I didn't do as a kid. My dad was a hardworking man, so he didn't have really the time to teach me how to ride a bike or take me to the park whenever I wanted to go and things like that. Yeah, we did those things, but it was spots in life, because we had to choose them because he was a working man.
Priorities were not the same.
No, and time was in.
Time was not the same, and opportunities were not the same.
Absolutely. My dad, being an immigrant himself, found it tough to find
Immigrant
jobs.
from where?
Honduras.
Honduras.
Yes.
Okay.
So he found it times hard to find jobs and things like that. So when he would get a job, my father would give it 1,000%. He always made sure I was good, but I work a lot. So one of the things that I decided too, as being a single dad, was I'm not gonna be that person. I'm gonna get a job that allows me a sense of freedom, that allows me to take time off, that if I needed to take time for my kids, I can literally send an email to my supervisor, I'm currently going through this, or I'm currently doing this, or I currently need this time off, and it wasn't gonna be red barriers or red tape around it where I couldn't take the time off. Now, if you know a lot of people who work these jobs, especially, imagine my dad as an immigrant dad, and now he has this job, and now to go tell his boss, I need to leave because I need to go to my son's school. Back then, jobs would be like, yo, you have a responsibility to your job. So my dad he instilled that in me.
Or you can leave, but you won't be able to come back.
Exactly. So that's not what I wanted. So I definitely decided to get higher education in order to get the better job, in order to allow myself some freedom to be there for my children.
You never can go wrong with education.
No, and this is why I'm so tough when it comes to education.
Though sometimes, I've been around people or hearing people try to kind of diminish it, but
no, and you hear it a lot, right? Because I've heard it from my own children. They're like, listen, I'm never gonna need this, I'm never gonna need that, I'm never gonna need this, but you're gonna realize soon how much you actually need it. It's a tough process. I remember going to school wasn't easy, but I decided to be there for them in a sense where anywhere I can lessen your anxieties, I'm gonna try to do that.
Of course, it was not gonna be easy because you already had 2 kids that you were taking care of, and I remember, myself, when I used to go to school, I didn't have any children, but because I always worked like, 2-3 jobs, when I came here, so, being an immigrant, life was not easy. Work, like my first job, I think paid me like $3.75 an hour. So, and I had a lot of responsibilities, right? So, and I was going to school full time because when I came, so it's like I was already 30 years old when I came to this country. So it was like, my priority was not party, was not having a man or a husband or kids. My priority was like getting a solid career. And because, I gave myself an ultimatum. And I said, after 10 years in this country, if I'm still doing the same thing I was doing when I first came here, then I'll go back home.
Right.
I wanted to be, after 10 years, to be a valuable asset to the country, right? So, and I've seen, the struggle that I went through working 2-3 jobs and being a full-time student. I've seen the struggle. Sometimes my stress level, only God knows, will go from 0 to a number that I could not even read.
Right.
So, and to see like, my classmates, with 2 kids, 5 kids, 6 kids, plus a husband or a partner in the house. And I'm like, I remember, one day I went to that girl and I said, how do you do it? 5 kids? And me, I don't have any kids. And I've seen that I'm up to here.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge. And that's why I give a lot of credit. When I said I give a lot of credit to all the single parents out there, so it's like, I mean it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely a challenge when it comes to balancing life, because at the same time, I'm also grateful that I had the mental capacity to be able to take on that challenge. There's a lot of people who can't.
That was gonna be my next question. How you balance, your stress level in that situation?
What I've done is really I utilize what I have in front of me, right? Let's say per se, like when I go to work, I used to have someone like you. And we would sit and we would talk and you would give me great advice and we would kind of go back and forth on what's going on. And I utilized things like that. So I was able to utilize my resources as far as my friends, my coworkers, in order to use them as a form of outlet into letting them know what my stresses were, get the advice that I needed, and at the same time, just let it go. Let it go, because if you hold on to it, you become resentful.
That was a coping mechanisms for you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, 100%. The people around me, I've been blessed. I've been blessed to have people around me that were able to guide me and also just sit and listen.
And I think one of the things that kind of like really help you out, it's you were never afraid to share,
Yeah.
Your experiences. You were never afraid to ask for help when you need it. And you were never afraid to say when you don't know it or you don't have it, to say, you know what, I don't know it, I don't have it. And that's how we get to learn. That's how we get to grow. And that's how we get to have, we get to get our problem solved. And I'm pretty sure that, so without you having that personality, so that probably would have been a struggle for you.
Yeah, I was never scared to communicate, only because I had to, right? If I would have held it all in, this is how people burn out. This is how people end up in positions in their lives where they're just so stressed that they don't know how to move anymore and they kind of just give up. And giving up was never an option for me. So if me vocalizing where I needed my help or what I was going through allowed me to get that peace, I was going to do that. And I appreciated every time you sat and spoke with me. I appreciated any time my other coworkers and sat with me, my friends who would just show up and be like, yo, you look stressed today. You want to talk? And then just sitting on my stoop and having that conversation. I'm just so blessed to have had that, because not many people have that, or a lot of people don't have the capacity to even be able to share with others, so they hold it in. And next thing you know, you see them imploding, and next thing you know, they fall in. This all trickles down, because eventually your stress goes onto your children. Then your children start stressing other things in which they are now, if your kids are like you, they're also not vocalizing and opening up. So they're also internalizing everything. So my kids literally, we go places and they're like, yo, your kids are so social. Like your son's over there talking to those groups and your daughter's over there talking to this group. And then they bring these two groups together and I'm like, yeah, that's me. We're vocal people. We love to share, and we do it just in order to kind of gauge, where our inner self is at. Because if we don't let it out, we're becoming something that we're not.
Exactly. So let me ask you, Mr. Flores, I know like you have a 22, a 17 going to be 18 soon, and a 15 going to be 16 soon. What are the challenges of that age bracket now?
Man. Well, that one brought its own challenges, right? When they were younger, it was easier because you're kind of like, get dressed, go to school, get dressed. But as they developed their own personalities, right, and they became their own people, I had to adapt to that, because it was no longer just about me. I got to also nurture who you're becoming, right? So we have my daughter, starts 14, 15. Here come the boys, right? And it's like, oh man, how do I approach this? So here I am again. I'm reaching out to people I know who went through these things already, and they're like, man, there is no book. there is no instructional manual to this. It's based all on how you can perceive it and how you can guide your children. Luckily, I'm blessed again, right?
Yeah.
That my daughter, yeah, she had her boyfriends here and there, but it wasn't like, I'm moving out, this is it, and this is forever, right? My son too. My son came with his own challenges as a teenager. He hits puberty. He starts thinking he's a man.
But before we even address your son situation, for your daughter, it's like you always had that choice. You always make her believe that you trust her.
Yeah, 100%.
And she could have trust you back.
Right.
I think that's one thing that play a major role into your relationship with her. And so it's like, because every case is different. You're gonna have one who will challenge you to the core.
Yeah.
But so that trust, trust between kids and parents, it's very vital. It's crucial, and every parent out there, whether it's a couple or a single parent, you have to build that trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
With your kids.
Absolutely.
Now let's go back to your son.
Yeah, no, so I mean, as boy and girl, they have separate challenges, right? As my son went into his teen years and he was growing up, he hits puberty, hormones are all over the place, they start believing they're grown. So it's at this point, I got to start kind of like, okay, you're growing up. You're not grown. You're growing up.
Know the difference.
Exactly, and again, I never had children who wanted to run the streets, so I'm blessed with him there. He enjoys being with me, spending time with me. So let's just put this way. Early this year, he decided he wanted to start skateboarding. Now, this is something I did as a teenager and loved doing, right? And he goes, Dad, let's take out the skateboard we have and let's go. And in my head, I'm like, boy, I'm old. I can't go skateboarding with you. But then I said to myself, if I don't go skateboarding with him, he's gonna find somebody to go skateboarding with. And I don't know who that person's gonna be. So what happens? Here I am on Saturday on my skateboard going to the park with him. And it became I think this year me and him bonded the most. Right?
And I think that skateboarding benefits you more than you benefit him.
Listen,
because you look so good.
I've been trying to
I didn't want to mention anything about the belly, Mr. Flores, but since you touch it, so
And that's an extra perk, right? That's an extra perk that came from that. But what it did allow us to do was spend a lot more time together. Get into a hobby that we both like.
That's really good quality time.
Man, if I wasn't here today, that's where we'd be. At the skate park skateboarding. We have plans of doing it tomorrow. We're trying to get as many days in before the winter comes. But it's just spending time with him has really allowed me.
Now he's the one that you get to spend more time with?
I don't need friends. I have friends. I love my friends. But he's it, as long as he likes spending time with me, that's all that matters.
Oh, okay.
And he wakes me up early on a Saturday like, hey, Dad, you ready? And I'm like, let's go, And it's all based, again, I'll take it back to my dad. My dad didn't have much, but he was always present. And that's one thing I decided to lock into permanently in my life, is that I'm going to be present for you guys.
And you see the circle?
Yeah.
Because he was there for you, he was always present for you, and you knew whatever that he installed in you, you kind of like, were like very beneficial to you.
Absolutely.
And you say, you know what? That was my role model, and I'm gonna make sure that I implement all of them into my kids and be present, be the father that my father was for me.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's very, impressive.
And my grandmother, she was a great woman, helped raise all of us, me, my uncles, my dad, right? But she has said something one time, and she says, be the person you would want your kids to be. I was a teenager at that time. I wasn't even thinking about being a dad. But she would say these things to me and my uncles all the time. Be the person you want your children to be one day, because they're going to see and they're going to learn from that, right? So if there's anybody who's seen my struggle the longest, would be my son, because I've had him living with me the longest. He's been with me for, I want to say, going on 14 years now. And I've only had my daughter with me for 7. But one thing that he can see is that I went to school, because he was there for that. I was dropping him off to the sitters while I went to school. He's seen that I showed up to his school. He sees that I advocated for him. He sees that I was there to support him. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I probably did tell him not too long ago, one day you're going to have children. Be the person you want them to be, because they're going to see that. And just every time I sit down and I talk to all my children and I see where they're at mentally, where they're at with their plans in life, I'm sometimes I sit back and I'm like, wow, like you guys have your own little life going on. Like,
you know what? So I was trying not to mention that on the show, but the way that he's looking at you with such a passion, and I'm like, you can tell that he's a proud son.
That's my guy.
And and looks so lovely and sweet. But you know what? After the show, if you wanna leave him here, I'll take him.
You'll take him.
I always wanted to have a son.
No, I need to go skateboarding.
Oh, I forgot that part. So now you can get your child back. So my next question, what is the most significant lesson that you have learned as being a single father?
So you hear it a lot. You hear it a lot how they say being there is half the battle. And when I tell you that is a fact, is being present. If I can tell any single father, if I can tell any single mother, I would tell them, you don't need to have anything. You just need to be there. They appreciate your time. They appreciate the lessons you want to teach them if you're there. If I'm telling you, don't do this, don't do that, I don't want you in the streets, but I'm out hanging out with my friends every weekend and drinking and showing them something different. Exactly. The way that the kids interpret things is visually. You can listen. I was a kid that my grandparents and my dad used to tell me all the time, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. But if I didn't see it, I probably wasn't going to listen to it. So my dad made it a point that he would be at my schools. He would be there. He would do these things for me in order to show me, like, I'm not just telling it to you. I'm here. You could see it. So even career-wise, like working, I've always been a worker. I never had the greatest jobs. But my dad worked a lot, and it wasn't always the greatest jobs. But he was there every day doing the job because he knew he had a responsibility. So even though I didn't have great jobs, I was always at work. I was always showing up. I was always doing what I had to do. Again, because I saw that. So as many times he could have told me, yo, you got to go to work. If I didn't see it, I probably wouldn't have listened, But what I would tell anybody is literally the lesson to be learned here is just to be there.
Okay. You hear me now, Mr. Flores. Be there. So my next question, how does being a single parent impact in your life?
Okay. It had made it for them much better, right? When I was a bachelor, I was doing bachelor stuff. Who knows where I would be, you know what I mean? Being a single parent made me grow up.
In what way?
Emotionally, right? Spiritually, right? Because I believe God does things in your life for a reason. If you were interviewing my son, he'd probably tell you that I tell him all the time. I think he saved my life in many ways. I was an angry teenager, and it wasn't anything that my family did. I think I just had a whole different vision of what my life should have been or would have been. But spiritually, I think God put my children with me in order to say, you have a bigger role in this life than whatever you're doing at this moment.
To save you and use you as they have said that you're supposed to be.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. For society.
Absolutely. I mean, even in my 20s, I was still, I was going through relationship problems and all these things. So I was more like, screw everyone, whatever. I'm going to party. I'm going to hang out. I got my own place. I can do whatever I want. That lasted about a year.
There was no set vision.
No, at all. Like I said, I didn't go back to college till I got my son. When I got my son is when I said, you know what, I need to be in a better place in order to provide what I need to provide for him, right? And And that's really the biggest change in how it's impacted my life, is where I found purpose in what I needed to be doing. Yeah, I was seeing my kids every other weekend, but that was it, right? It's easy to pick them up on Friday, you hang out with them, you bring them back Sunday, and you kind of go about your life, right? You call them and things like that. But again, this is all things that are very limited, time
And
limited.
there are people who will pick them up on Friday, drop them to their mother.
And really still
And
do
go
whatever they
along-
want to do, and
and
still
go
do what
along
they
with
want.
their lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
But no, the biggest lesson I learned, and the biggest thing that impacted me, was literally that it changed me to fit the role that I think I was meant to have this whole time.
Okay, that's very good. So now, if you were to give any advice to all the single parents listening or watching right now, what that would be?
Have a lot of patience. Have a lot of patience. Kids will challenge you, and they will challenge everything about you.
Sometimes to the core.
Yeah, all the way to the core, But patience also teaches them patience, right? Because there's plenty of times I've not had the patience, right? And literally, again, I'll go back to my son. Well, he'll look at me and be like, "Dad, it's not even that serious, man." And this is him as a teenager. And I love that about him. You know why? Because you're not afraid to teach me something. You know what I mean? And then when I tell you, there's times I'll take 2 steps back after hearing him say that. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. Let's order some food. You know what I mean? Because it's one of those things where patience, you teach it to your children, and they're gonna teach it to their children. And it's one of the things that people lack the most right now. You hear families who are really falling apart because they don't have patience to hear their kids, listen to their kids, be with their kids. Plenty of times I would hear things like, "I can't be around them today," or things like that. I don't have that privilege. I have to be around my kids today, so I have to have some patience.
And one thing, when you mention patience, culturally, there is a very big impact too. Because it's like, where I came from, parents in general tend to not to have too much patience.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, they tend to like, hey, I say so, you do so. You're not really allowed to ask too many questions.
Right.
So, and I think that's a big factor that need to be considered.
Absolutely.
Culturally. So it's like, you have many parents who believe, hey, you have you eat, you have a roof over your head, I put clothes on your body, I send you to school. That's what you stick with that.
Yes.
Sometimes you have kids who want to have a conversation or something happen in school and want to address that, but the parents tend not to be available. And I understand, and I've seen it, within my own culture. So, and I'm like, hey, give some room, hear what the child have to say, because like you mentioned earlier, so if you don't make yourself available for your kids, somebody else will make himself or herself available,
100%.
And you don't know whether that person is a pervert or not.
And that's whether they're a pervert or whether they're just guiding your child for their own personal benefit, right? And that could be this is how a lot of teenagers end up in gangs, how they end up living or moving in with wrong people just because they don't want to be at home. And if you ask a lot of those kids, all they'll tell you a lot of times is, my dad didn't understand me, my mother didn't understand me, and that's because different factors play into that too, right? But like my dad.
Or my dad was never around. My mother, so raised me, but she was always working.
Right. And exactly, that's what I was about to say with my dad. My dad didn't really have much time to show up to my schools as much as I probably needed to. Or it was more like, get up, get dressed, get to school, right? There was no like, but dad. There was no but dad. It's, you're going to do what I just asked you to do. And that's one thing I don't do with my kids. Often we sit around and we talk a lot. A lot of things that they say I might not like, but at the same time, I got to give them that platform to be able to address what they
To
want
have
to
a
address.
conversation.
Absolutely.
Because, it's like, we're going to have a conversation. I give you that platform, but I'm still the parent.
Yes, yes, 100%. And there's one thing I'll always say to any parent, even if single or not, is that you have to make yourself available to listen to your kids. Because if you don't listen, somebody else will.
Somebody else will.
And that attachment there is a big win for somebody else. And it's a major loss for the parent.
Yeah, and oftentimes the end result when somebody else is, make them him or herself available to listen, the end result will, oftentimes will not be beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've seen it so many ways. There is a mental health, component associated, with being a single parent. Like depression, anxiety, stress, trauma and grief, self-guilt, financial situation. So have you ever experienced, like depression, anxiety? Stress is common.
Right. Stress is a common factor, right? But stress triggers everything else, right?
Yeah. So
there's plenty of
if your
times
stress is not being addressed properly, you're gonna end up,
it escalates
with anxiety.
Yeah, and you end up with
your
anxiety.
is not being addressed, appropriately. Then it's, it's something else. So
100%. You nailed it right on the head. It's exactly what it is. Now, I've probably experienced all the above. This is probably my one flaw, right? That I've attributed to myself. I might have a million flaws, but the one I really attribute to myself is one I picked up off my dad, right? And it's one where my dad, probably raising me, experienced anxiety, depression, and stress. But I remember him telling me, and I probably said this out loud myself, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to be depressed. I don't have time to be stressed or have anxiety. I have to go to work and I have to make sure my household is taken care of. Which is why a lot of times I utilize what I have available, which would be someone like you at work, or my friend next door, or when I talk to my friend from Florida, then she calls me. These are my only outlets. I don't have time to be able to go for an hour therapy session. I don't have time to be able to go to a group therapy or things like that. One, because I rather utilize that time with my kids doing something more with them, as opposed, even though self-care is important, right?
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question. How do you take care of that?
So I with people like you, I utilize what's available. Even though Dr. Hyppolite, you're great, I utilize my friends too, right? They don't have a degree.
I'm gonna start charging you.
Hey, listen, I'm willing to pay. I'm willing to pay. But yeah, I'll utilize my friends. They've been great counselors. Even sometimes, even somebody you didn't expect to be talking to, because sometimes you need a real out the box person, somebody who's nowhere near you to really just say, I don't know you, but from what I've heard, you might want to look at this way. And yeah, like you said, I'm not shy to talk. I'm not shy to share.
I always admire that from you, man.
And
I'm telling you, I love you. When I say I love you, I love you. I hope my husband is not watching. The next factor, so is like it's still mental health related. They have the social stigma and judgment, which so when you say you're not afraid to talk, it's because you live past by.
Yes.
Because if you were to stick with the judgment of society will lay on you, then that will have been a big challenge for you to move forward.
Oh, 100%. A lot of, like I said, a lot of single parents internalize everything. But that's when you start really seeing the stress in them. You start noticing it's affecting their jobs. It's even their jobs start saying, oh, that person's, they're going through something again. Or when you let everything stay inside of you, it's going to project. It's going to come out somehow, some way. It's going to facial expressions, outbursts and things like that. And I've seen it at work. I've seen some of my coworkers literally break down where I'm like, oh, wow. Like, I never seen this coming, but it's because they held it in for so long. At some point, it becomes a boiling point.
And the worst part, I've witnessed people, who internalize things, like you just mentioned, so hard, and eventually not knowing hard to properly address it, ended up using alcohol.
Yeah, yeah. You know, amazingly, it's ironic that you mentioned that, right? Because I think I bought some beers, I want to say about a few months ago. And my daughter opened up the fridge and she goes, "You plan on throwing these things out because you don't drink them. Like, why are they even here?" And I'm like, "I'll leave them. Maybe somebody will visit and we'll give it to them." But one thing I don't do is I'm not going to address my stress, my anxiety, my depression through substance. One, I'm only showing my children that that's the only way you can address your issues, right? And two, I don't want to be an addict to anything. You know, I'm an addict to life right now. I'm an addict to my children, you know, but I'm not going to decide that to relieve this stress, I'm going to have a beer. I rather relieve the stress by calling someone. And maybe at the end of the week, if I want to have a beer just socially, maybe I'll do that. But because I'm stressed, I've never said, "I had a tough day, let me have a beer." I've never said this.
That is some good willpower you have right there.
Yeah, no, and again, I'll attribute it to my dad. My dad wasn't a person who really drank like that. He was a social drinker when he was with friends and things like that, but he never, and I've seen his stress. I've seen financially, mentally, emotionally what he went through, you know, in life, and he never decided that I'm gonna just be drinking, you know, so.
Basically, you know, for you to be the man that you are today, you owe it to your dad.
100%. I say it all the time.
We salute your dad.
Thank you, Dad.
Research indicated that 45% of people experience being a single parent suffer with depression.
Yeah.
And based on your experience, you know, it's like, though thanks God you never really gone deep through that.
No, and I've seen people who have
experienced it, but you know, based on the challenges, the stress, the misery that you went through, so you see how that can happen, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I've had friends, like single moms, that have broken down to me, you know, because we utilize each other. Like the same way I speak to them, they speak to me. And there was times where I'll cry with my friends because I'm like, wow, like, you know, that's such a burden to carry with you, you know, and like I said, if you keep it internalized, it'll change you and it'll change your household.
And, you know, and sometimes, you know, people may not really pay too much attention to that. But some side, you know, when you deal with people, you know, who are single parents, you have to kind of like monitor them. Like your friends, they come and they say that you're sad.
Yeah.
It's not you. You're not involved. You don't talk. And they know that, hey, you know, he's always, you know, voicing his opinion out. So all of a sudden, so he doesn't talk. You know, he's so sad. So what's going on?
Yes.
Those are the little signs, you know, when you mention into your friend or family members who are single parents, you know, to like, you know what, let's talk about it. How can I help?
Yep.
How can I assist? What should I do?
Yep.
So it's very important. You were privileged to have, you know, like a whole group around
A support team, yeah.
You know, you raised 3 beautiful children, but at the end of the day, you didn't raise them alone.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So
And
maybe
so when they
if
say,
you didn't have the presence of those people into your life and their lives,
could have been
only
very different.
God knows what their outcome will have been.
100%.
You know,
like
so-
when they say it takes a village, they're not lying. It does. It takes a village. And let me tell you, and it didn't stop at my friends, right? When my son started elementary school, his social worker at the school, she was pretty much his mom at the school. And if I didn't have her, I don't even know what I would have done, because she would call me and be like, "You don't have to come in. I'm taking care of it right now." And one day I showed up to the school and I'm like, "Is everything all right?" Like, you know, and she goes, "No, I see what you're doing. So anything I can do on my level, I'm going to take care of for you." And for 6 years that she was his social worker at the school, she was a blessing.
Because
you know?
she sees that you care, you were involved, and hey, it's like that was her way
Yeah,
to assist.
absolutely.
But you know, the most important thing, all those people who assisted you or contributed toward raising your kids with you, it's because you allow them to.
Absolutely. And you have to do that. You have to ask for help when you need it, receive help when you need it, and just be, a person who's willing to open up enough to allow people to say, you know what, I'm willing to help you.
Oh, it was quite a moment.
It was.
I really enjoyed that conversation.
I enjoyed it too.
All my questions that I put down. So it's like, I'm like, oh, let me just engage into that conversation and leave those questions behind. So I really enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed the time, that you, with you. And it's a great pleasure.
No, it's a pleasure doing it with you.
When I ask you, can we do this? And without even thinking, not even once, you say, I'm in it.
Let's go.
I really appreciate it,
No,
man.
thank you so much.
And, you've been such a great father.
Thank you. But again, right, it's because of people like you who make this possible. Like I would also share to people who see single parents, be there for them. Try help any which way you can, because like you said, just 1 hour that you take that kid gives a respite to that parent where they can recollect themselves, and I've been blessed to have that. So
yeah, pretty much so. And you call it the right way. It's a blessing.
100%.
It's a blessing, because it's like when people who don't have that blessing, I only can imagine what the challenges, can be.
Yeah, no, and they're big. The challenges are big.
So thank you so much, for making today possible.
No, thank you.
And that's the end of our show. And before I leave, you with some resources. There is the National Single Parent Resources Center, and we have UNICEF, U.S. Census Bureau. Go to those websites, and you will find a lot of information, to get some assistance, while dealing or being with as a single parent. And your last thought before we close out?
My last thought is just telling any single parent, just have patience. Everything will play out, and be present. Being present.
Okay, thank you so much. It was with you, Dr. Beatrice Hyppolite, with Your World.